A protest song is a song that is associated with a movement for protest and social change, and hence part of the broader category of topical songs, or songs connected to current events. It may be folk, classical, or commercial in genre. Among social movements that have an associated body of songs are the abolition movement, prohibition, women's suffrage, the labor movement, the human rights movement, civil rights, the Native American rights, the Jewish rights movement, disability rights, the anti-war movement, and 1960s counterculture, art repatriation, opposition against blood diamonds, abortion rights, the feminist movement, the sexual revolution, the LGBT rights movement, animal rights movement, vegetarianism and veganism, gun rights, legalization of marijuana, and environmentalism. Protest songs are often situational, having been associated with the social movement through context. Goodnight Irene, for example, acquired the aura of a protest song because it was written by Leadbelly, a black convict and social outcast, although on its face it is a love song. Or they may be abstract, expressing in more general terms opposition to injustice and support for peace or free thought, but audiences usually know what is being referred to. Ludwig Van Beethoven's Ode to Joy, a song in support of universal brotherhood, is a song of this kind. It is a setting of a poem by Friedrich Schiller, celebrating the continuum of living beings who are united in their capacity for feeling pain and pleasure, and hence for empathy, to which Beethoven himself added the lines that all men are brothers. Songs which support the status quo do not qualify as protest songs. Russian composer Dmitri Shostakovich, in the book Testimony by Solomon Volkov, alleged that many of the composer's works contain coded anti-government messages, placing Shostakovich in a tradition of Russian artists outwitting censorship that goes back at least to Alexander Pushkin. He incorporated many quotations and motifs in his work, most notably his musical signature DSCH, which are D, E flat, C and B, the composer's initials in Russian. His longtime musical collaborator, Zhveny Mravinsky, said, Shostakovich very often explained his intentions with very specific images and connotations. Protest song texts may have significant specific content. The labor movement musical Pins and Needles articulated a definition of a protest song in a number called Sing Me a Song of Social Significance. Phil Oakes once explained, a protest song is a song that's so specific that you cannot mistake it for BS. Some researchers have argued that protest songs must express opposition or, at the very least, offer some alternative solutions if they are limited to drawing attention to social issues. A broad definition, which does not exclude any upcoming form of creativity, defines a protest song as one performed by protesters. An 18th century example of a topical song intended as a feminist protest song is Rights of Women, 1795, sung to the tune of God Save the King, written anonymously by a lady and published in the Philadelphia Minerva, October 17, 1795. There is no evidence that it was ever sung as a movement song, however. Types. Billie Holiday's haunting rendition of Strange Fruit powerfully protested violence, making it a rhetorical protest song of political and social systems of her time. The sociologist R. Serge Denisov saw protest songs rather narrowly in terms of their function as forms of persuasion or propaganda. Denisov saw the protest song tradition as originating in the Psalms or songs of grassroots Protestant religious revival movements, terming these hymns protest propaganda as well. Denisov subdivided protest songs as either magnetic or rhetorical. Magnetic protest songs were aimed at attracting people to the movement and promoting group solidarity and commitment. For example, keep your eyes on the prize and we shall overcome. Rhetorical protest songs, on the other hand, are often characterized by individual indignation and offer a straightforward political message designed to change political opinion. Denisov argued that although rhetorical songs often are not overtly connected to building a larger movement, they should nevertheless be considered as protest propaganda. Examples include Bob Dylan's Masters of War and What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. Ron Ironman and Andrew Jamison in Music and Social Movements, Mobilizing Tradition in the 20th Century, 1998, take issue with what they consider Denisov's reductive approach to the history and function of song, and particularly traditional song in social movements. They point out that Denisov had paid little attention to the songs, tunes, or protest music, considered them strictly subordinate to the text, a means to the message. It is true that in highly text-oriented Western European song tradition, tunes can be subordinate, interchangeable, and even limited in number, as in Portuguese fado, which only has 64 tunes. Nevertheless, Ironman and Jamison point out that some of the most effective protest songs gain power through their appropriation of tunes that are bearers of strong cultural traditions. They also note that there is more to music and movements than can be captured within a functional perspective, such as Denisov's, which focuses on the use made of music within already existing movements. Music and song, we suggest, can maintain a movement even when it no longer has a visible presence in the form of organizations, leaders, and demonstrations, and can be a vital force in preparing the emergence of a new movement. Here, the role and place of music needs to be interpreted through a broader framework in which tradition and ritual are understood as processes of identity and identification, as encoded and embodied forms of collective meaning and memory. Woo! Martin Luther King Jr. described the freedom songs this way. They invigorate the movement in a most significant way. These freedom songs serve to give unity to a movement. Protest songs in Australia. Indigenous issues feature prominently in politically inspired Australian music and include the topics of land rights and Aboriginal deaths in custody. One of the most prominent Australian bands to confront these issues is Yothu Yindi. Other Australian bands to have confronted Indigenous issues include Tidas, Kev Carmody, Archie Roach, Christine Anu, The Herd, Neil Murray, Blue King Brown, the John Butler Trio, Midnight Oil, Warumpi Band, Paul Kelly, Powderfinger and Xavier Rudd. In addition to Indigenous issues, many Australian protest singers have sung about the futility of war. Notable anti-war songs include And the Band Played Waltzing Matilda, 1972 by Eric Bogle, A Walk in the Light Green, 1983 by Redgun, most often remembered by its chorus, I Was Only 19. Many songs have also been composed about environmental issues, protests and campaigns. These include Rip Rip Woodchip 1989 by John Williamson and Let the Franklin Flow 1983 by Goanna. Numerous songs were written and performed by protesters during anti-logging blockades in northern New South Wales, including Behind Enemy Lines, Tonka Toys and Hey Tyrannia. Midnight Oil, in particular, garnered worldwide attention with 1987 album Diesel and Dust. Its singles The Dead Heart and Beds Are Burning illuminated the plight of Indigenous Australians, with the latter charting at #1 in multiple countries. Midnight Oil had continued global success with Blue Sky Mining 1990 and Earth and Sun and Moon 1993, each buoyed by an international hit single in Blue Sky Mine and Truganini, respectively, and remained a formidable album chart presence in Australia until their 2002 disbandment. The group held concerts sporadically during the remainder of the 2000s and announced a full-scale reformation in 2016. The band released their 15th and final studio album, Resist, on the 18th of February 2022 and announced an accompanying tour. The band's music often broaches political subjects, and they have lent their support to multiple causes. They have won 11 ARIA Awards, count them, and were inducted into the ARIA Hall of Fame in 2006. Midnight Oil's legacy has grown since the late 1970s, with the outfit being cited as an influence and their songs covered by numerous popular artists. Aside from their studio output, the group are celebrated for their energetic live performances, which showcase the frenetic dancing of Peter Garrett. Guardian writer Andrew Street described Midnight Oil as one of Australia's most beloved bands. Irish rebel music is a subgenre of Irish folk music. The lyrics deal with the fight for Irish independence, people who were involved in liberation movements, the persecution and violence during Northern Ireland's troubles, and the history of Ireland's numerous rebellions. Among the many examples of the genre, some of the most famous are A Nation Once Again, Come Out Ye Black and Tans, Erin Go Bra, The Fields of Athenry, The Men Behind the Wire, and the Republic of Ireland's national anthem, The Soldier's Song. Music of this genre has often courted controversy, and some of the more outwardly anti-British songs have been effectively banned from the airwaves in both England and the Republic of Ireland. Paul McCartney also made a contribution to the genre with his 1972 single, Give Ireland Back to the Irish, which he wrote as a reaction to Bloody Sunday in Northern Ireland on January the 30th, 1972. The song also faced an all-out ban in the UK and has never been re-released or appeared on any Paul McCartney or Wings best-ofs. The same year, McCartney's former colleague John Lennon released 2 protest songs concerning the hardships of war-torn Northern Ireland. Sunday Bloody Sunday, written shortly after the 1972 massacre of Irish civil rights activists, which differs from U2's 1983 song of the same title in that it directly supports the Irish Republican cause and does not call for peace, and The Luck of the Irish, both from his album Sometime in New York City, 1972. Irish alternative rock post-punk band from Dublin, U2 broke with the rebel music tradition when in, again, 1983 they wrote their song, Sunday Bloody Sunday. The song makes reference to 2 separate massacres in Irish history of civilians by British forces, Bloody Sunday 1920 and Bloody Sunday 1972. However, unlike other songs dealing with those events, the lyrics call for peace as opposed to revenge. The Wolf Tones have become legendary in Ireland for their contribution to the Irish rebel genre. The band has been recording since 1963 and has attracted worldwide fame and attention through their renditions of traditional Irish songs and originals dealing with the former conflict in Northern Ireland. In 2002, the Wolf Tones version of A Nation Once Again, a nationalist song from the 19th century, was voted the greatest song in the world in a poll conducted by the BBC World Service. The Cranberries' hit Zombie, written during their English tour in 1993, is in memory of two boys, Jonathan Ball and Tim Parry, who were killed in an IRA bombing in Warrington. Protest songs in the United States are a tradition that date back to the early 18th century and have persisted and evolved as an aspect of American culture through the present day. Many American social movements have inspired protest songs spanning a variety of musical genres, including, but not limited to, rap, folk, rock and pop music. Though early 18th century songs stemmed from the American colonial period as well as in response to the Revolutionary War, protest songs have and continue to cover a wide variety of subjects. Protest songs typically serve to address some social, political or economic concern through the means of musical composition. In the 19th century, American protest songs focused heavily on topics including slavery, poverty and the Civil War, while the 20th century saw an increased popularity in songs pertaining to women's rights, economic injustice, current politics and war. In the 21st century, popular protest songs have addressed topics such as police brutality and racism. The 1960s was a fertile era for the genre, especially with the rise of the civil rights movement, the ascendancy of counterculture groups such as hippies and the New Left, and the escalation of the war in Vietnam. The protest songs of the period differed from those of earlier leftist movements, which had been more oriented towards labor activism and adopting instead a broader definition of political activism, commonly called social activism, which incorporated notions of equal rights and of promoting the concept of peace. The music often included relatively simple instrumental accompaniment, including acoustic guitar and harmonica. Many Americans still remember Odetta Holmes' performance at the 1963 Civil Rights Movement's March on Washington, where she sang "Oh Freedom." One of the key figures of the 1960s protest movement was Bob Dylan, who produced a number of landmark protest songs, such as "Blowin' in the Wind" 1962, "Masters of War" 1963, "Talking World War III Blues" 1963, and "The Times They Are A-Changing" 1964. While Dylan is often thought of as a protest singer, most of his protest songs spring from a relatively short time period in his career. Mike Marcussi writes, "The protest songs that made Dylan famous and with which he continues to be associated were written in a brief period of some 20 months, from January 1962 to November 1963. Influenced by American radical traditions, and above all by the political ferment touched off among young people by the civil rights and ban the bomb movements, he engaged in his songs with the terror of the nuclear arms race, with poverty, racism and prison, jingoism and war." Many protest singers such as Neil Young, Patti Smith, Tom Waits, Jake Holmes and Bruce Springsteen returned to the public eye with new protest songs for the new war. Young approached the theme with his song "Let's Impeach the President," a rebuke against President George W. Bush and the war in Iraq, as well as "Living with War," an album of anti-Bush and anti-war protest songs. Smith wrote two new songs indicting American and Israeli foreign policy, "Kana" about the Israeli airstrike on the Lebanese village of Qana, and Without Chains about the US detention center at Guantanamo Bay. REM, who had been known for their politically charged material in the 1980s, also returned to increasingly political subject matter since the advent of the Iraq War. For example, Final Straw, 2003, is a politically charged song reminiscent in tone of world leader Pretend on Green. The version on their Around the Sun album is a remix of the original, which was made available as a free download from the band's website. The song was written as a protest against the US government's actions in the Iraq War. Waits has also covered increasingly political subject matter since the advent of the Iraq War. In The Day After Tomorrow, Waits adopts the persona of a soldier writing home that he is disillusioned with war and thankful to be leaving. The song does not mention the Iraq War specifically, and as Tom Moon writes, it could be the voice of a Civil War soldier singing a lonesome late-night dirge. Waits himself does describe the song as something of an elliptical protest song about the Iraqi invasion, however. Tom Uret describes The Day After Tomorrow as one of the most insightful and understated anti-war songs to have been written in decades. It contains not a hint of banality or sentiment in its folksy articulation. Bruce Springsteen was also vocal in his condemnation of the Bush government, among other issues of social commentary. In 2000, he released American Skin, 41 Shots, about tensions between immigrants in America and the police force, and of the police shooting of Amadou Diallo in particular. For singing about this event, albeit without mentioning Diallo's name, Springsteen was denounced by the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association in New York, who called for the song to be blacklisted, and by Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, amongst others. In the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, Springsteen released The Rising, which exhibited his reflections on the tragedy and America's reaction to it. In 2006, he released We Shall Overcome, the Seeger Sessions, a collection of 13 covers of protest songs made popular by Pete Seeger, which highlighted how these older protest songs remained relevant to the troubles of modern America. An extended version of the album included the track How Can a Poor Man Stand Such Times and Live?, in which Springsteen rewrote the lyrics of the original to directly address the issue of Hurricane Katrina. His 2007 long play Magic continues Springsteen's tradition of protest songwriting, with a number of songs which continue to question and attack America's role in the Iraqi war. Last to Die, with its chorus of Who'll be the last to die for a mistake, whose blood will spill, whose heart will break, is believed to have been inspired by Senator-to-be John Kerry's 1971 testimony to the US Senate, in which he asked, how do you ask a man to be the last man to die in Vietnam? How do you ask a man to be the last man to die for a mistake? Gypsy Biker deals with the homecoming of a US soldier killed in action in Iraq, and Springsteen has said that Living in the Future references extraordinary rendition and illegal wiretapping. Long Walk Home is an account of the narrator's sense that those people living at home he thought he knew, whose ideals he had something in common with, are like strangers. The recurring lyric, it's gonna be a long walk home, is a response to the violation of certain things, such as what we'll do and what we don't, in spite of these codes having been, in the words of the narrator's father, set in stone by the character's flag flying over the courthouse.
And we are asking Americans to think about that. Because how do you ask a man to be the last man to die in Vietnam? How do you ask a man to be the last man to die for a mistake?